All right, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:03. First thing on the agenda is our next meeting dates. Given some holidays coming up, I look at the calendar instead of the third Monday of the month for November and December. I think we need to do the second. Excuse me. But the October, the third Monday would be the 17th. And then it would be November 14th and December 12th. Do those work for everyone?
Yes, I think those were the dates you had mentioned previously anyway.
Yeah, they're clear on my calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then next we have approval of meeting minutes. I sent a few edits, sorry, rather late, just about 45 minutes ago. Did everybody get that email?
I did.
Yes.
I was embarrassed to have missed those obvious corrections, but anyway.
All right, so does anybody have any other corrections they'd like to make to those minutes? No, okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our June 20th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Roxanne,
Yes.
Elaine,
Yes.
Tabor,
Yes.
and the chair, yes. Okay, moving right along to the staff update. Josh, I'll turn it over to you. I don't know if you have the agenda there. I think we anticipated that you would have an update on several things. Do you have that for us?
Yes, I have an update for several things. I'm just jumping between a few screens here.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks for bearing with me. The parking utilization analysis at the town center and sort of more broadly with the library is still ongoing. Tim and engineering met a couple weeks ago, and that process is continuing while they either work. There's not sort of much to update apart from the fact that it is continuing to be in process, and planning and engineering are working together on that. On open space, we have received 2 responses to our sort of open space and recreation plan proposal, one from MAPC and another from a consulting group whose name escapes me at the moment. Tim is in a bit of a bind at the moment with responding to it, as the 2 responses came through at very, very similar proposals for the cost, where the consultants were $50 cheaper than MAPC. But MAPC's proposal included an additional $20,000 as part of their sort of additional funding to go towards community engagement. So he is talking with Kevin Freitag now about how that sort of additional fund, if that sort of changes the decision making beyond just having to accept the lowest bid, because essentially it's sort of like we've gotten an additional $20,000 discount. So Tim's working on that. We've got both responses are excellent, but MAPC's additional funding is very enticing. So Tim is talking with Kevin on that front. East Milton Square planning assistance grant RFP was officially approved and by the planning board a few meetings ago, and we have prepared the application packet, and it is ready to go out. It's not yet been sent out to consultants, but Tim has a few in mind that he's planning on sending it out to. It doesn't need to go through a sort of a larger bid process, and so we're expecting to have that sent out very soon, and then get responses in over the coming weeks. So that's all moving ahead well. Sorry, admitting folks as well. And I think those are the items on the staff update. Open space, Eastbourne Square. Oh, bike pedestrian master plan. We received that plan, I believe, Roxanne, it was presented to you all at the select board a couple of meetings ago, potentially last meeting. But that has come through, and on the staff side, we're quite happy with what we've seen. I don't know, Roxanne, if you can speak more to your impressions of it when they shared it with the select board.
Sure. So they shared it with the select board. They said it was almost nearly complete. There were some concerns on some aspects of it. Some of the potential and things in the plan with making roads one way, or bike lanes down the middle of a road. You know, there were certain aspects of it that at least two of us had questions on, as well as the connections at either end of the plan to Mattapan and towards the Hyde Park side of the plan for the connections to the Blue Hills. And consequently, I know that the DCR is having, listening sessions and so forth coming up with bike plan connections. They're not just for bikes, so they're like bike pedestrian plans. And I know that there's one on the 20th. And I just attended a stakeholder one on the 13th last night. So I think it wasn't a complete plan in terms of we didn't vote on it. They presented what they had, which they said was pretty well done. But a couple of us had a couple of questions or concerns. But overall, the other thing is that I think that it would be good to actually have the plan and study it a little bit instead of just on the spot. Here's the plan, approve it. You want to have time to digest it, look at it a little too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Roxanne. And I wanted to second that meeting on the 20th that I believe Tabor shared out a few days ago. That's at 6 p.m. And will be a listening session on sort of the Ponza to the Blue Hills. And I think we should get some really sort of interesting feedback and some good information there. So many thanks to Tabor for sharing that, at least to me. I'm sure you all had other avenues by which you learned about it as well.
I'll ask other members if they have questions for Josh, but I do have one first. On the parking utilization analysis at Town Center in the library, Josh, that's been on our agenda for a while. And, that they're working on it doesn't really give me much information about what they're really doing. So do you have any more information, or do I need to reach out to Tim for additional information on that?
Yeah, that is all I have. Tim has been leading that charge. So you would have to check in with him.
Okay. Oh, Josh, you went on mute there.
Oh, sorry. I think I pressed with the palm of my hand. Yeah, Tim didn't share with me any specific updates when I followed up with him today at a meeting. So his answer may be similarly vague, but all I know is that he and engineering are still chugging along as well as they can.
Okay. Any members have questions for Josh on his staff update?
Good here.
Nope. Okay.
Nope.
All right, then we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the review and discussion of the application for the 2 new seats for this committee. And the next step is that we'll pass on our recommendation to the select board and the planning board, who are the appointing boards. They'll be having a joint meeting. I think the not next week, but the week after. It looks like this is trying to be scheduled for that week. So everyone should have the 10 applications. I did a spreadsheet to help organize based on the current committee members, and then the 10 applications. I shared that out. Would anyone like for me to share that on the screen, or is everyone good with just chatting?
I think that was good. I have it on my screen now, and it's very helpful to do a sort of apples to apples comparison.
Okay, so then I'll do a screen share. Josh or whomever, can you give me screen share capabilities, please?
You should have them now, Cheryl.
Okay, thank you. All right, can everyone see that? Thumbs up, yes?
Yep.
Okay. So the top 5 members are us current members. And my understanding is that we're serving until the next vote. So technically our terms expired in July, but we're continuing to serve until the next vote. The only one who term wasn't expiring in July was Elaine, and her term expires in January of 2023. So I put in the number of years that we've been on the committee, which precincts that we're from, for Roxanne and I, that we're representatives of our boards, our expertise and experience, and our other involvement. So I think this is just helpful to see as we add 2 seats, how we round out the other 2 members. And again, just for members and maybe for those who are watching, when I think Arthur actually, who was the select board member at the time, suggested adding 2 seats to the committee, there were a couple of reasons that he suggested it and a couple of reasons that we supported it. And that was, one was to add diversity to the board. We could look at what does diversity really look like? Is it racial? Is it gender? Is it where we live? Is it whether we own property or not? What kind of other involvement we have? So the sort of big picture of diversity. And then the other piece was really to try and, since we've been at this for over 6 years into our 7th year, really help us in the next couple of years identify the places where we have some gaps in our implementation or even people following up on that, and see whether some of these 2 new people can help us get to our report on the how much success that there's been in the implementation of the plan that was adopted in 2014. And then our charge is to make a recommendation whether the plan should be updated. All right, so that's the background. And then the 10 candidates, I think we can see all of them on my screen now. I use the addresses in the applications to look up precincts. So that's the column D. And then what I put in columns G and H is pulled right from their applications. So some had more information in their applications than others. I know the select board through staff had sent out an email to the 10 suggesting if they wanted to add any information, additional information, that they could forward that. As of yesterday, I asked the select board's office if they'd received any, and they hadn't. So what I put here is just is based on the applications that were submitted initially by the applicants. So with that, I had made a suggestion that people kind of come up with several, they would sort of rankings, several people who they would recommend. Ultimately, I think we'd like to recommend 2. So I'm going to throw it to Tabor first. Tabor, would you like to talk about candidates and the qualifications or the characteristics that you think would be important for the committee at this point?
Sure. I guess one of my concerns is, and this is going back to the qualifications and the the exchange you had with Deb Savona. I have not spoken to Deb Savona about this, but I do know her reasonably well. She used to be a neighbor of mine, and I've known her for probably 10 or 15 years anyway. And I think she would be a great candidate, but she's probably technically correct that she may not be actually qualified under the the rules and regs that the town meeting and or selectmen have laid out for our committee. So that's my first question to you and to the committee, as to whether or not we have how firm are we going to be on this, and that I don't know. I'm not so sure that having something to do with real estate, that's great, but that doesn't qualify for everything. And being an architect, that's great, but that doesn't qualify. We do need diversity of backgrounds too, and so that's my theory here on that one. I think she would be great, but I don't know that necessarily anything that she has done, if she presented a resume, I didn't see one, would necessarily address the qualifications that are required. A number of the other ones are real estate development, real estate sales, et cetera. And I think that's great. I do think that construction and or practical development, architect would be probably more practical than the real estate sales. I mean, I'm disqualifying myself there, because real estate sales is what I do. And I think that actually walking through the process of development, if you are a contractor or if you are a developer, you run into these roadblocks. This is why you can't develop things, because of and it may be something that the town isn't really aware of. So I think that the developers and or architects and contractors might have a leg up on the others here. That would be one issue. Glenn Pavlicek, I know him well. He's a great guy. He's incredibly well qualified, but there isn't a committee in town that he hasn't been on except this one. And I don't think that disqualifies him. I just think that it's maybe time for others to be able to step up. And there are plenty of people in town that, now that they're aware of this, want to volunteer. And I would really like to see, I'd really like to encourage others to step up and do something and put in their 2 cents. And I don't know that Glenn would be terribly disappointed, but I think I don't know if we're voting just for things or against, but I would say Glenn in my book is maybe a little long on the tooth than the amount of experience that he's had, and I'd like to see some other people have their input here. Are you looking for us to actually select 2 or select 3, or is that?
I think yes, we will, but let's, I think, talk about some of the issues you raised, and
Okay.
I think other things that we might want to talk about as issues. The charge that was adopted by town meeting in 2014, that in terms of what the committee is to do, but also the qualifications for members, does say real estate, architecture, landscape architecture, economic development, or other relevant fields. And we did, when the committee was asked to be expanded to 7, there was no request made to change that. So I guess the question becomes what other relevant fields might be. One of the things that I think that I've been thinking about is community building and sort of outreach. I would consider that to be relevant, because that's how you get this kind of work done. And then the other thing is that there's a big section of the master plan that's dedicated to municipal services. And so is there something that might be considered a relevant field, in terms of the physical plant and services that are delivered by the town? So those are a couple of kind of the questions that I have, because I feel like those are a couple of places that we've had a little bit of a gap, over the 6 years. So I'll throw that out now to Elaine and then Roxanne, just for general discussion about it, and then we can get into specifics of candidates. Elaine?
Sure, yeah. By general discussion, do you mean in terms of the qualifications that that we're looking for, or do you mean kind of doing what Tabor did, going down the list?
Well, I think you could do that. You could do I guess what I'm suggesting is not just naming 2 or 3 candidates at the moment, but to kind of go through and say the kind of characteristics or qualities or features that you think would be important, and then we can see which candidates might meet those.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that having experience, there's so many different qualifications. I mean, I going through all the 10 candidates, I felt that every single person brought unique experience and valuable experience. I had chosen 3, and I'm happy to share the reasons why after, but Glenn was actually one of my 3, and I have a bit of pause after what Tabor said, just in terms of it's just a really good point, and giving some other people in the community an opportunity to participate. I'm not so tied to having someone in architecture. I think that, or development. I think that there are a lot of different relevant fields. I think project management's a great one. I mean, when we talk about the charge of the committee and the work that we do, we follow up with a lot of committees. We make reports on progress and recommendations. So I think that it's a skill set that could be very valuable. I think that in terms of supporting our goal for broader engagement, folks who, like, for example, Regina Campbell Malone, who shared that she has a network of over 600 community contacts and represents a precinct that is not yet represented on our board. I think, to me, those were some things that I looked at. Hope that helps.
All right, thank you, Elaine. How about Roxanne?
Hi, I just unmuted, sorry. So I look at a couple of different things. I go back to the original charge of the committee. So I look at what the background is with that. I look at the fact that we have a bunch of different people on the list. I think all of them could bring something special to the committee. I do look for new voices on the committee. I do like that people have construction background. I think that's somewhere where we're lacking. So I do like that. I think that I just look at who can really best meet the goals of that. I look at where they're located. You're talking about doing some development in East Milton. There's a lot going on there. So I look at people that are from that area. You're talking about the potential MBTA community, whether or not we're going to do part of the Communities Act, so people that live in that area that could benefit the committee with their background. So I look at a lot of those different features, and that we can bring a different kind of voice. Thank you.
Okay. So you did mention something which I didn't mention at the beginning in terms of the charge of the committee. And so I'll just mention that again, is really to follow up on the implementation of the plan that was adopted. And so the way that we've done that is sort of outreach for Roxanne and I, to our boards that we serve from, and sort of a liaison to what actionable items that our boards have been taking to meet the goals of the master plan. And then in the case of others, we've kind of assigned out the other 3 members to follow up on particular goals and objectives, and reach out to other boards and committees for updates. And then we've also sort of led some planning efforts where we've been able to help the planning department sort of expand their capacity. And we did that in Milton Village, and we've done it at Town Center. We've done it some with the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and with traffic analysis and so forth. And so the recommendations in the master plan in terms of objectives and goals, some of the recommendations are very specific and sort of easily identified actionable items, and others are broader. And so some of it takes a little more follow-up and probably a longer time to implement, and some of it has a lot of different potential partners, and sort of getting all those partners together can be challenging. So, and we're going to go through that spreadsheet after this discussion. So, okay, I'm going to go back to Tabor and ask you, Tabor, if you would like to make any recommendations in particular, now that we've all discussed some of the, well, first of all, I would like to say also that the 10, I'm really excited about the 10. You know, I wish we had opportunity for, they all have somewhat different, I guess, characteristics that would meet some of the things that we're looking for. And I would say that I would encourage them and hope that they get involved and stay involved, whether it's an appointment on this committee or following what this committee does, or a new master plan committee in a couple of years that might update this master plan, or any other kind of things that could help advance planning in Milton. So I just wanted to say that too. So now back to Tabor. Oh, Elaine, yes, before I go to Tabor, you have your hand up?
I just wanted to mention that Dick is on.
Oh, Dick, okay. So Dick, did you hear any of what we said about general characteristics for folks?
Not really, Cheryl. I'm a little confused. What time was this meeting supposed to start? I looked on the Milton Public Meeting calendar. It was supposed to start at 7:30. So what time do we start, at 7?
We did.
Yeah, the
Oh.
agenda that was posted and signed by the clerk was for 7.
So
Oh.
was it on the town website? It was actually posted at 7:30?
7:30.
It was an error in the calendar, not on the agenda.
Well, right, but that's fine. But I'm just, it wasn't like I was deliberately not participating. I was. It said 7:30 is what I looked at. So all right.
All right, so sorry, Dick, let me just give you a little overview. Roxanne, when you sent that email, it wasn't clear to me that that's what would happen. Sorry about that. I could have tried to follow that up a little bit, but so what we set I think we may have already talked about this previously, Dick, but the next meeting dates will be October 17th, November 14th, and December 12th.
Okay, that's fine.
We approved the meeting minutes with the edits that I had circulated late this afternoon before the meeting. Josh gave a staff update. I'd say that things are progressing, but there's not a lot of concrete updates there. And then we've discussed we started the discussion of the applications and next steps. So what we're going to do is make a recommendation of who we think that this committee would like for the select board and the planning board to consider for appointment for the 2 new seats. And so we talked about what, I'll scroll back up, what the experience and other involvement that the 5 current members have, a little bit of background on that, which precincts we come from, and you know, it's pretty clear that we all have the prerequisite experience that's called for in the charge. But what we were talking about was what other things might be considered relevant experience in terms of thinking about the 10 applicants and what we need in the next couple of years as we look to report out on the progress and make a recommendation whether the plan should be updated. And so everyone was talking about the kind of the criteria or the things that they think might be important before we actually speak to names. So that's, we can repeat what we've said, but we'd definitely be interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I'm a little interested in as to what you had previously stated. I mean, I think that when we discussed and agreed and promoted the expansion of the committee, we had 2 things in mind. One was diversity and inclusion. The second one was to add just add more people because of the workload. I think one of the things that I'd like to talk a little bit about is how we define diversity. Is it geographic? Is it racial? Is it age? Is it community, prior backgrounds? Because it gets a little fuzzy in terms of, as we try to put this thing together, as to what we're really trying to accomplish here. So I'd be interested in what everyone has to say about that.
Okay, on the diversity side, what I mentioned, that we were interested in geographic, age, gender, racial, economic, all the things that you can think of, because, the way the plan impacts, or the way the town is influenced by decision makers, really should be comprehensive, right? So, to the extent that we have information, Dick, it's really what was in the applications themselves, right? We don't
Right.
have, I looked up the precinct numbers based on addresses, but the other things that I put on the spreadsheet that's in front of you, I culled from the applications. Some people wrote more in their applications than others. Some included resumes and some didn't. And so I pulled what I thought was like most related to the master plan work, the implementation work, and put them here. But you may have pulled out different things from their applications. Everybody has them and can chime in on any aspect of them. And so as far as diversity, I think if we look back up to geographic, and we can see where each of us lives, and we can see that obviously 5 people, we don't represent all of the precincts if there's 10 precincts in town, right? And with 7, we won't represent them all either. But if we could try and pick up some, so what we talked about was, in terms of diversity too, is like, who is participant in town government, right? Are there demographics that are that participate less than others? Are there parts of town where people participate less than others? And then also the fact that MBTA communities will be on the horizon. Someone who lives in that catchment area, which would be along the trolley line. So that was another thing that we talked about in terms of diversity.
Okay.
Does anybody want to add to that?
No, I think we're limited to on the diversity issues on the information that was provided, and home address is certainly one of them. Diversity of professions and expertise, but that's pretty much it. And I think that's the goal here is to spread out, and it appears to me that looking at these, all of these guys are qualified to be on a committee because they are very interested in it. And I think that's, as a town committee member, I think that's one of the primary qualifications, is just being willing to show up at these meetings and put your 2 cents worth in and actually participate. And that's not been easy in the past to get people to volunteer for these. So I'm really encouraged to see all these numbers.
Okay, so did anybody else want to give Dick any background before we ask for him to give us his thoughts? All right.
I think you
So
did a good job.
Dick, what else might you want to talk about or think about relative to how we make a selection? You mentioned the diversity aspect of it.
Well, I think that's important. I think we want to get as diverse background of people as possible, and not really have people who focus on 1 or 2 particular issues. This is a townwide master plan, and as a result, we have to look at a myriad type of situations that we're all trying to get some sort of thoughts on. And I agree with exactly what Tava said. I'm looking at the backgrounds and the interest of all the people that have applied, and I'm sort of taken back by how many people want to be involved in this committee, when 4 or 5 years ago we were almost holding signs out in the street to see if someone wanted to participate. I guess I think I'd like to see some geographic diversity, certainly. Age diversity is not a bad thing. Some people who have lived in town a little bit longer than others, I think, is and as well as some newcomers. You have renters versus owners, things of that type. And I think there's no bad candidate here. I mean, this this is sort of interesting, trying to pick 2 out of 10 very qualified people. And I just, I don't know. I don't have a real good sense right now of what I would want or who I would support. So I need help.
All right, so let's go. I started with Tabor, Elaine, Roxanne, you. So I'm going to go back to Tabor then and see if he can start us with any names.
Okay. So given the locations, a few people I think are disqualified in my view. Glenn Pavlicek, as I discussed already, but he's also in precinct 10 as I am. And we've got that neighborhood covered. But I do think there are a couple of people, and it's just as Dick said, that are in those MBTA communities that really aren't represented here and ought to be. And I think precinct 1 and 2 would probably be paramount, maybe 3 also. But so my first candidate would be the Regina Campbell Malone. I was very impressed, as Elaine mentioned. Her. She's happened to mention an awful lot about what she's done, and the outreach part of this is important. Having gone through the process in rezoning Milton Village, that really had a lot to do with outreach, and I think we as a committee learned how much outreach we weren't doing when we discovered people didn't know things that were obvious to us, and they had not been informed. And so that's something that we definitely need to step up on. And in this next East Milton and whatever comes after that, I think all of these things are going to be important for the outreach. And that struck me that she was that was one of her strengths, and she's in precinct 1. Deb Savona, as I previously mentioned, I know her. I don't know many of these people or any of these people actually, but I do know her, and I know what she's capable of, and I do know that she's a hustler. She returns calls, she chases people down, she doesn't take no for an answer, et cetera, which is kind of what you want when you're harassing town employees for information on what we can do to implement what the recommendations from the master plan. And that's something that I think she has. And it turns out she's also in precinct 2, one of the MBTA zone communities that we do need some people with a neighborhood flavor there because the rest of us just drive through. So I think that's important. My third would be Jim Davis. And I think that, I don't know him, but having watched, read it through his application, the generalization and the construction background, I think is important. And there are others that have that also, but he happened to be in a precinct that's not represented. And anyway, those are my 3 that I would propose. But I got to say, that leaves a lot of really well-qualified people on the table. And I don't know, I just feel badly that we're not taking advantage of all of them. But those are my 3 recommendations, if that's what we're narrowing it down to.
Tabor, you took that first step for us, so thank you. I'm going to move to Elaine for her to give us her 3, if she will.
Yeah, so I am with Tabor in recommending Regina Campbell Malone, given that she's an educator, whereas at least 15% of the strategies within our master plan mention schools as a partner. She also represents a precinct that's not yet represented on the committee, and addition, as I mentioned earlier, she has a broad network of community contacts, which supports our goal of greater engagement. My second is going to be Jonathan Lashley. I think, Jonathan has the relevant housing development and architecture experience. However, what really stood out to me was the time that he spent in urban planning, multifamily senior and affordable housing, and I saw that as especially pertinent. He resides in precinct 4, which is also not represented on the committee. And I feel that his experience in project management, given that the charge of our committee would be valuable. And then number 3 stuff, there's so many great candidates. I think Deb Sibona, having experience knowing her personally, she's definitely a go-getter. She knows a ton of people. She's in precinct 2. I could get on board with that. But I'm still going to go with Glenn Pavlicek, just because, in my opinion, he brings a very broad perspective, having served on the committee that developed the master plan, and then having served on so many committees that are partners in implementing the master plan. So that's my 3. Thank you.
And Roxanne?
Okay. So I'm the newest, one of the newest members, so I didn't know if everybody else wanted to go first. And then I
Okay.
can come in at the end.
Sure.
Like what everyone says first.
Okay, sure. I'll give Dick the next, if you're ready, Dick.
Yeah, I can. I can give a couple anyways. I wasn't ready for 3, but I have 2. I have
Okay.
I happen to like this Dan Walsh, precinct 2. His real estate planning and sales background, so I think that's important, and interested in seeing attractive housing and business development, which I think is one of the pillars of the master plan, is important, and also comes from a precinct that isn't particularly represented right now. I do know Dimitri Petion. He's someone that I know well. Well enough. I think he'd be a good addition. He'd bring a little different perspective from precinct 1. He has real estate development experience, which I think is sort of important. And my 3rd choice would be Glenn Pavlicek, just because I've known Glenn for a long time, and he sat on the committee, and I think he brings, going back to I think what Elaine said, how important schools are to the whole process. Glenn probably knows the inner workings of the school system as well as anyone that we could come across. So, I mean, it almost looks like I went from the bottom up, those 3, but it just so happens those are the 3 that jumped out to me as candidates that I would feel all very comfortable working with, and I think they'd be a good addition to the committee.
So Roxanne, were you looking for me to go before you, or did you want to jump in here?
Sure, you can go ahead. That's fine.
Okay. I too had a hard time because there's so many good candidates, but and I know several of these candidates. I know Deb, I know Glenn, and I know Dimitri, and I know they would all be great additions to our committee. But I too am very intrigued by Regina Campbell Malone's interest for the same reasons that Tabor and Elaine expressed. And then I also, Jonathan Lashley, and I know you probably think, oh, well, an architect likes an architect, which in some ways is true because we understand each other's education. But for the same reasons that Elaine highlighted, I do think housing and affordable housing is one of the overarching issues that gets discussed at nearly every meeting. It's the reason we have so many 40B developments. It's the reason we have challenges for people who want to live in Milton, children who grew up here to stay here, elders who've spent their whole lives here to be able to stay here. And so understanding housing and affordable housing in particular, I think would be really valuable. And then I was kind of also the idea of real estate, but then also interest in seeing attractive development and adhering to approved plans, I thought really spoke to me, because this is a plan that's already been approved, and seeing development happen is something that the plan anticipated and wanted to see. So for that reason, Dan Walsh is one of my 3. So Roxanne.
Okay, wow. Interesting to hear all the reasons for all the different people, all the different folks. So first I want to just thank all the people that submitted their resumes and their interest in being in committees and to an earlier point that somebody said, you know, there are many times that we didn't have anybody, or maybe one person, and we're trying to find people to run. So I think that's a great thing that we have some variety, and we have some names that have never been on committees, other people that have all different backgrounds. And thank you, Cheryl, for doing this sort of spreadsheet. It's easy to look at. So it's hard because there are several people I know on here, several that I've been on committees with. Well, one in particular, I've been on, two of them I've been on committees with. So I'm trying to think of what they can add to the committee. And so looking at that, I have a couple of people that I have in mind. So first, I would say Dan Walsh. As somebody had mentioned earlier, it's precinct 2, which is great. I like the background that he has. And I liked, there was something that he said that was that he's, you know, likes blending old and new together and in historic areas. So I thought that was sort of an interesting comment that he had on his papers that he submitted. So I did like Dan Walsh for that. And he's representing some diversity because of the precinct he's in. I also do like John Cohane. Interesting, he was formerly in construction. Now he's very familiar with the stretch energy code. Very active in his precinct, which is 7. I know we have another member in 7, but you know, there's a lot going on in that precinct right now. And I think he's somebody though that could take a good role on the committee and you know, not just focus in on his own section of town. So I do like him for that. And then I do, there are 2 other people I do like. I do like Warren Lizio for some of his background. He's got real estate, financial asset management, you know, managing bigger things, looking at community focused livable neighborhoods, interesting background there as well. And I guess I also like Jim Davis because of the construction. And again, I think we're lacking in construction backgrounds on this committee. So I think that is important. So I know I said more than 2, I said 4, but when you have 10 people, it's sort of hard to get it down to some ones that you think are, you know, even getting down to 4 is sometimes hard to do. So that's what I would say.
It's very hard. And I feel
I
bad
wish you had
that-
more spots, you know, you just
Right.
don't. Yeah.
I'm with you on that. So if I may, there were 3 of us who said Regina Campbell Malone. So are we in agreement that that would be one of the 2 that we would recommend?
Yeah.
Okay.
so.
I was just gonna say, I just don't think she has the background. You know, we're looking at what town meeting approved. I just don't think, I mean, just because of the precinct and the community organizing, I mean, I think a lot of these people have connections that way too. It's just, I'm looking at what the definition is from town meeting. So for me, I can't support that because of the definition.
So I guess what I would suggest is we could put forth 3 with the idea that we would ask town council to render an opinion, or at least render opinion for the select board and the planning board about whether what we consider to be a relevant qualification is something that could be supported. Because, you know, we could explain what, you know, the reasoning is, and then, you know, they could decide, the planning board and the select board could decide they don't agree with that separately. But it would be good to know from a qualifications, you know, point of view, whether what we've sort of thought about that is supportable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with Roxanne, though. I'm just looking at Miss Malone's credentials on this sheet, and I did read her application. I just think that for what we're doing, it doesn't really match up to the charge of the committee as it is right now.
Right.
And,
Okay, so we're gonna, does everyone agree with what I suggested in terms of putting forth 3 with that recommendation of checking into that?
I'd support that.
Okay.
Support that as
Sure.
well.
Because if it is something that is not supportable, then I would like for the committee to think about making a recommendation to change that in the coming year. Because I do think community engagement, as Tabor said, and reaching people who haven't been historically engaged is just really important. And I don't know why why it shouldn't be an important qualification for this committee. So,
And the
Well,
master plan
exactly.
also called for that.
right,
To, interfere or interact with the schools, and being an educator, the background is perfect for that angle.
and as we said, precinct 1, it's, I know the planning department is interested in planning work from precinct 1 because it's a part of town that has not received attention in terms of planning effort. Other parts of town, Milton Village, East Milton Square, have received far more attention from a planning point of view, traffic analysis point of view, et cetera. And so we don't hear the voices from precinct 1 very often. And so I do think that the select board and the planning board should hear us out on that. And what I was going to suggest too is that after this meeting, I could work with Josh to put a summary together that would be shared with the planning board and the select board. And that summary could be shared out with the committee members to make sure that it's consistent with what you think we discussed and agreed to. So that at least we document this discussion in a memo, if you will. Does that sound good?
So the way I'm looking at this, so I'm looking at this, looks like there's 4 candidates from precincts 1 and 2 that would arguably be 2 of the precincts that have been underrepresented on this. So I think if we're looking for that type of diversity, we have 4 candidates basically we could be taking a look at besides Ms. Malone. So
Okay, so we have others that had 2 of us suggest them. And I think at least 2, or maybe 3, Dan Walsh, right? That's another one that had 3.
He was 3.
Yeah, so and he has the qualification in terms of real estate, represents precinct 2. So is everyone comfortable putting forth Dan Walsh?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, then,
he checks all the boxes for me anyways, in terms of, I think what we're trying to do here.
Right.
all right, so if we're looking at then precinct 1, Dimitri Petion, who I know. In fact, before we had 10 applications, I reached out to Dimitri to see if he would be interested because he is a resident of precinct 1. He has real estate development experience. I happen to know that it's in housing. So those, and he would represent, some additional diversity for the committee. And I think, Dick, you mentioned Dimitri as well, so I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah,
elaborate on him.
I know Dimitri socially and a little politically too, but having said that, I think once again, as we go back to what I think we were trying to do with the expansion of the committee is to really get some geographic as well as racial diversity on this committee. And I think Dimitri, to me, would check those boxes as well as some of the other people. So I would have no problem supporting his candidacy if that was the case.
Roxanne?
Hi, I was gonna say, I do know Dimitri, he's a great guy. But the only question I do have, again, is we have nobody on there with construction background. And I know that Jim Davis, I'm looking at him, he's in precinct 8. We have nobody on with that. Cohane has the construction background. We have nobody on with construction background. I think that's important too. So
Well, if I think about what we have left to do in terms of implementation of this plan, I actually think I rank the geographic diversity higher because there's many of the implementation items don't involve construction. They involve public services, they involve traffic, they involve access to other modes of transportation. Precinct 1, as I said, is an area that hasn't received any planning attention, very little. And yet, if you look at the traffic situation there, where you have all the roads coming together, there's very few playgrounds there. Open space is another big component of the master plan. An open space master plan is underway. So, I mean, that's where if we feel as if the Regina Campbell Malone doesn't quite meet it for qualification in terms of her expertise. She is precinct 1. She is a person of color. Dimitri is precinct 1, person of color with real estate development experience. That's where those things to me outweigh the construction experience.
Are we at this point looking for recommendation number 3? Because it seems like
Yes.
we've made 2.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
So Tabor and Elaine, because we've heard from Roxanne, myself, and Dick on this one. Is
This
there
is
someone
Dimitri?
else? This is either Dimitri or someone else to be considered for that spot.
Well, I don't know, Dimitri. I know that 2 of you have got some experience with him. It sounds like he checks the boxes. That's great. And it also, but I would say this, Jim Davis in the similar front does also check the boxes. Maybe it would be better to have more, Dimitri would be better because he's in precinct 1, and that's, another issue that we've got with the MBTA communities, and as we've discussed, lack of outreach planning there. So I would certainly support him if you guys know him, but I don't, so I can't really say much in favor.
Roxanne, before I come back to you, I'm going to just go to Elaine on this, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also don't know Dimitri Petian. Sorry, I apologize if that is mispronounced. I could support him as a candidate, based on their recommendations and what's been said in terms of his what he would bring to the table. I still am supportive of John Lashley, but I also could get behind Warren Lizio. I like the idea of hitting a precinct that we haven't hit, and Jonathan hits that, Dimitri hits that, except for the fact that we're making a recommendation for Regina, who is also precinct 1.
Yeah, the likelihood is that they both won't get in because 3 won't get in, right?
That's a good point.
And Dan Walsh is pretty unanimous, so I think, that would be our number 1, right? And then my suggestion would be that we said Regina would be number 2, but if not for the qualification question. So then if this 3rd person would really be in the replacement of Regina if qualification were the issue there, right?
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective. I guess that I would move forward with Dimitri as my recommendation for the 3rd.
And Roxanne, you had your hand up before I called on Elaine.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Mhm.
Again, I know Dimitri, he's a great guy. Jim Davis, though, again, it's a precinct, another precinct we haven't had represented. And I know somebody mentioned about the MBTA communities, but we also just are going with Dan Walsh, who is in precinct 2. So that does encompass that. I know we don't have anybody in 1. However, I'm just wondering with Jim Davis, I it's a precinct we don't have, it's construction knowledge, and I know what you all are saying, so I mean, if I could take them both, I'd take them both, you know, so I like both.
That's the challenge. We can't take them all, right?
Right, so,
All
yeah,
right, so
yeah,
I'm just going to ask again, so Dan Walsh, everybody's comfortable with is the first recommendation, correct?
Yes.
All right, so we said there was enough support for Regina, and I don't know if it was unanimous, pending a question about qualifications. And then third, it seems there's at least a majority also for Dimitri in the event that Regina would be deemed not to be qualified. I know a couple of you have suggested others, but I think that there seems to be at least 3 of the 5 of us for those last 2. Does anybody want to change have they been compelled to change their mind by other discussion?
Sure, we don't have to rank them. Can't we just give the committee 3 names?
Sure, yeah, we can just
I
give.
mean, I think we're sort of splitting hairs a little bit between, you know, seems to be 2 pretty good qualified candidates, Ms. Malone and Dimitri.
Okay.
I think, you know, if we, and Walsh, I think we just present, these are the 3 that sort of rose for whatever reasons we want to articulate to the top of the barrel, and you know, then it's their decision. I mean, it's
Right.
I don't think we have to get into 1, 2, and 3. I think they're all, you know, they're all qualified. So I think some are more qualified than others, but that's not my call. I think we'd be lucky to have any 2 of the 10 on our committee. But right now, I'm looking, if we're really trying to get to, and I was trying to get that earlier, we're really trying to get to diversity, and diversity being categorized or as geographic and or racial, for example, then both Ms. Malone and Dimitri check those boxes, right? So, you know, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another.
Okay, well, point well taken. I'm perfectly fine just sending 3 non-ranked. Roxanne, hand raised.
yeah, and I was just gonna say that, you know, ultimately this is a joint appointment with the planning board and the select board, so we're gonna be meeting in about 2 weeks, and we're gonna take into account, you know, what was suggested here for names, but we're also gonna revisit all of these names and have discussion, you know, about some of these candidates too. So, you know, you can certainly submit the names as you will, and we're gonna also look at it too. So there's gonna be more than this process going forward.
Correct, yeah.
Could I ask also just, how do we treat the 7 that weren't selected? Do they get a response from this committee, or do they get a response? Do they get nothing until the selectmen and the planning board have spoken? I'm not so sure what the next step is.
I guess I'm open to suggestions. My thought would be that we wouldn't do anything with any of them until after that joint meeting. But then I would suggest we send an email to all 10 of them and thank them for submitting and invite them to participate. And as we work in their neighborhoods, you know, that would they be interested in being a liaison, you know, things like that, because, you know, it's good to have liaisons in the neighborhoods where efforts are being made. And if they have suggestions about participation, you know, community engagement, I think that would be really valuable. There's times like when we did Milton Village, you may recall, there were a couple of developers who gave us their input, you know, did pencil pro formas, you know, they were interested in our work, but not on our committee, you know, and they helped us. And so that's what my suggestion would be to all of them. Tabor?
So if we make these 3 recommendations, the planning board and select board are under no obligation to listen to that, though. I mean, they could make and choose 3 others or 2 others that have nothing to do with the ones that we've selected. Is that true?
Yes.
That's true. I hope that they'll at least consider our recommendations because we're the committee that's been doing this work for over 6 years, and we have a good sense of what we need to finish our work, with our 10-year window. So I'm hoping that they're going to, I'm the member of the planning board who designated to this committee, and I'm hoping they're going to ask Roxanne and I for, the recommendations of the committee, but they're under no obligation to, correct? Roxanne?
I was just going to say that certainly we're all open-minded, so we're going to listen to what the committee is recommending. We're also going to look at all of these candidates as individuals, and both groups will look at what the recommendations were, but certainly we'll consider it, sure, but we're also going to look at each of them individually too. So.
And if anyone's interested, we can send you the date when that meeting's scheduled, once we know it, if you're interested in watching or attending.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Thank you.
If enough are interested, we might need to post it as a meeting, so just let me know if you think you're able to attend once the date's confirmed, okay?
We could just, I would just be interested in watching it. I don't know if we necessarily need to
Yeah.
attend, but
Okay. Dick, I see your hand raised.
Yes, this goes to Roxanne. Roxanne, this is going to be a joint meeting between the planning board and the board of selectmen going through these candidates. Is that correct?
Yes, so it's a joint appointment. So what we've decided to do is that all of these candidates will be listed, I believe, on the agenda for a joint meeting. We'll only be taking this issue up. And then we're not gonna necessarily talk about every candidate. We'll talk about the ones that we want to put forward on each of these groups and see if we can come to some kind of consensus.
So it'll be 10 votes versus 5. So what is the board of selectmen wouldn't vote on these 10 candidates and come up with 3 candidates or 2 candidates, and the planning board wouldn't have their own meeting come up with 2. You're going to do it together as a group. And so
That's my understanding. And I believe they're looking at the 27th for the meeting. Was
Right.
the latest I heard.
Okay, all right. That's
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion before we move on to the next item on our agenda? All right, I'm gonna stop this share. All right, next on the agenda is the discussion of our tracking spreadsheets. So thank you to everyone who's worked on those, and to Josh for setting up it on the OneDrive or SharePoint, what have you. So Roxanne, hopefully that format worked better for you.
It did, but for some reason, I don't know what I did. I saved it one place and I did another, but I was able to fix it. My son helped me. So I think everything's in there that I put in so far, I believe.
Oh, good. Okay. Because the benefit of obviously of something like this is that we're all working on the same document, right? So.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Will it get, my question is, before each meeting, will it get resent out so we can edit it? Or do we always go back to that one that he sent out?
It's a good question, because I went back to, let's go back to that one. So if the document's updated, even though you're clicking on the old link, you're getting access to the updated document, right? And so
I'm just thinking
that.
I'm just thinking it might be nice if before each meeting, like a week
Okay.
or so, if he sent it out again, because if we get a lot of emails, then you have to hunt again for it.
Yeah, okay.
It's way easier.
Josh, you taking note of that?
I am, yeah, and for other committees using OneDrive, if their bookmarks bar isn't too filled, we also recommend that.
Oh, okay.
It's always the same link and always the same web page. So that might also be a useful tip if you were interested.
Okay, no, that sounds like a good idea.
Thank you for our technology update, Josh. All right, so I think what we're going to do is just run through the first 2 goals, and we're going to run through, I guess it's the strategy, right? For the strategies in each of those goals. And I'm sorry, I'm on my laptop, so what I'm seeing on the screen, I can try and make it so we see all the columns, but I can't tell you that I'll be able to read it. So I'm just gonna gonna do it like this, and I think, can everybody reasonably read it now? On the screen, on your screen? Yes, okay. So I'm just gonna go back over to, so we can read this. The first goal is to preserve Milton's physical character. And then that has these bullet points of preserving and enhancing natural features, preserving and enhancing historic features, and preserving and enhancing the individual character of each of the town's neighborhoods, including the natural and historic features. And then, so underneath that, there's a number of strategies, and we'll talk about those now. So creating the partnership with DCR, Tabor, you were assigned this one, and there's some updates here. Does anybody want to talk about all the details in the updates, or do you want to just have Tabor say, give us a sense of whether it's just started or whether it's 50% met or whether the goal's been met? How do you want to go about going through each of these?
Might be good to do like a quick synopsis. If
Okay.
others agree. No, but I mean, if everyone.
Some of these are newsworthy, some of them aren't, I think, but yeah, I agree.
So I think the newsworthy part of this one was what was mentioned earlier about DCR having some public meetings about the connection to the Blue Hills, right? So
Right.
That's definitely newsworthy, and people might be interested because that first meeting is next week, right? The 20th. And I think information's on the town website about that.
Yeah, I think the unfortunately, the group, the Greenways Council, which was a DCR creation way back when, is now an independent group, works with the DCR, and the Ponce River Watershed, on whose board I sit, is also has several members on the Greenways Committee, and that they were pushing very hard to get the DCR to do this. This wasn't really necessarily on the town of Milton's behalf. It just so happens that the bike path and the Greenway run through Milton. But everybody was surprised that DCR actually went ahead with this. And I don't know, I mean, there were a lot of phone calls made to the folks at DCR. I was looking for information, and I don't know if I can push them to do something, or somebody else in Milton pushed them to do something. But I know the folks in the Greenway Council and the Ponce River Watershed were both surprised that the DCR came up with this meeting so quickly. And it seemed like it was sort of a response to somebody. So hard to say, they move in mysterious ways, but we'll take it. I don't know if that means 50% though, because a meeting doesn't mean that they've actually done anything.
All right, so what we should probably do here is say it started, and we're going to continue to monitor it, right, Roxanne?
Right.
I was just going to say, I was at a meeting on it. It's not, there is just talk of different ways of connecting to the Blue Hills, they haven't done any plans. It sounds like they've done some, evaluation of the area that they want to connect into out by Fowl Meadow and things like that, but they don't have any definitive plan, it sounds like, and that's what I was told.
This is not really for that plan. This is really the partnership, that we're creating a partnership with DCR, and that I don't know that has been addressed at all, because DCR is still, I think DCR has a much better or much closer relationship with the Greenways Council, and they are the ones that seem to be pushing this, but that doesn't really, there's not a partnership with anybody at Milton, I guess.
So the interesting thing is I went back and I looked at the more detailed descriptions in the master plan. And it does talk about connecting the Blue Hills under this topic or under this strategy. So while it's talking about partnership, it is also talking about connection. And it does seem dissimilar in terms of the strategy, but maybe we can think about if there's a different place or better place to put the connection from this, which is the partnership.
Right, I don't know that necessarily Milton is going to be involved, other than as a participant in the meetings, as Roxanne was, I mean, you know, as neighbors. But you know, whether there's actually anything being done, you know, because DCR is acts on their own.
So Roxanne, was that something through the select board, or was that through your neighborhood, or just?
It was supposed to be for stakeholders, and I think I had recently gone on to the Riverways Council meetings, and I think they knew me from there, and they knew I had a neighborhood that I, you know, used to be heavily involved in, which borders here. But I will say that there were a lot of, there were like some not town officials, state officials that were on there. And I believe they had a previous meeting the month before with more officials that I didn't know about. So this was a stakeholders meeting. They're going to have another one the 20th, and that's going to be a bigger meeting. More people can go to that. But they're also looking at connections, not just in the Milton section there, but also the Reedville Hyde Park. So to connect into, they were talking about trying to get up to like the Trailside Museum and the Blue Hills over there. So
So the question then is, does DCR do outreach to the town, through the planning department, or through the select board, town administrator, or someone like that?
my understanding is that they did for that previous meeting.
Okay, and do you know?
They
if
had
that
a
was
meeting
the
in
town
August,
administrator?
I believe. I'm sorry?
Do you know if it was with the town administrator or through the town administrator?
It might have been with the town administrator and the town planner. I don't know if you had a chance to talk with the town planner. But my understanding was there was a previous meeting that none of the like neighborhoods or anything like that were invited to, but I think officials were. My understanding is some of the officials were, like reps and stuff like that.
I see. So, Tabor, what do you think about trying to find out who they may have reached out to? Maybe it's through, Roxanne, do you have a suggestion for how Tabor or even Josh could find out?
Maybe ask Tim.
Okay,
Start with Tim.
I've worked through, I think I was on a list. I got that notice, but I think I was on that notice list because I'm with MAPC. And I don't know who else got that notice of the meeting, but I do know that the folks at the Ponce River Watershed and the Greenways Council did not get the notice. And so they called me and said, how did I get it? So I don't know. And I did not call DCR to ask.
Tabor, for which meeting are you talking about? The one.
This is the one coming
13th?
up. No, this is coming up next week, the 20th.
Oh, that will, I know that,
It's probably the same meeting you had.
it is, they
Yeah.
said it's going to be the same meeting pretty much that I attended yesterday. That will be on the 20th, but I know that on that call yesterday, I know that Ian Cook was there and Andres Ripley from the.
Right,
So they were both on that.
right.
And the 20th, I believe it's actually on the website, it's on ours as well.
yeah, I
Yes,
think Tabor sent that to me. I sent it to Josh and Tim and asked to make sure that it got sent to
Mhm.
town administrator, et cetera. So I don't know if it went to others first or not, but we did get the chain going through Tabor. So I guess the question maybe is initially, maybe Josh, you can find out whether Tim, and maybe he can, if not him, he can, I know with the interim town administrator and the new town administrator, there might be some gap in knowledge about what happened there. But it does seem like the town should know about these initiatives directly and not through other agencies and organizations, right? That's what this whole partnership is supposed to be about.
exactly.
Okay, so I guess some further follow-up. Tabor, maybe you can be in touch with Josh about this, and if Roxanne needs to be consulted, then
Sure.
maybe you can do that too. Okay. All right, so let's go on now to 1.1.2. Tabor, is this something that you can update?
So the update that I can mention is the planning board, as this was previously entered, some time ago, for the CPA funding. And that is scheduled to be started next year. But at the moment, I would say, has it started? Not really. It's not much of a partnership yet, but it's scheduled for the CPA for 2023.
So also, is this under where the open space master plan that is Josh referred to, getting the planning department getting 2 proposals for
Correct.
that plan, right? So I would say started.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start populating this. There we go. Anything else on that before?
I think it's too early, and I think the partners that are in on it, I think the trustees or Historic New England, I'm not aware that any of them are included yet. But I think once the plan takes shape, they will be contacted, and then we're probably going to get some input from them. But I'm not aware that anybody's been contacted. I mean, maybe Josh and Tim know, but I don't know.
Josh, do you have any knowledge of whether any outreach has begun on that?
No, and I don't imagine outreach will begin until after the commission sort of makes a decision on which proposal they want to move forward with.
Okay. I'm just curious, who's the guest contributor that occasionally is bopping around on the boxes here? Is that you, Josh?
It could be me.
No, it's not me. It's likely, yeah, one of you.
Okay, just curious if it's trying to highlight where we are, Elaine.
Yeah, I have Gmail, not Outlook, so it's I can't put my name. It just comes up.
That's okay. I'm just curious who the box is as they're getting highlighted. It's no problem. I'm just curious. All right. Anything else on 1.1.2 before we move on? Again, it's one of those I'd say we're going to have to monitor, right? So there's not, I'd say these first 2 are pretty close. We need to stay on top of just to continue to track progress. 1.1.3, developing a plan to protect Milton scenic view sheds. The one thing I can think of that applies to that is the Great Estate PUD zoning, which did seek to protect view sheds from Canton Avenue into that development, or into that to Canton Ave property where the Wolcott Woods is. I would say that this has started, but I don't know that I would say it's 50%. So I'll put a yes for started. Any questions about that? I think that zoning actually is a pretty good example, but there aren't that many. We have to look at which parcels that, or what kind of zoning that could apply to, since much of the town's developed. All right, 1.1.5, Tabor, another one for you.
What about the 0.4?
Oh, sorry. Elaine, that's for you. Developing a strategy for monitoring recreation needs.
Yeah, so in talking with Kevin at Park and Rec, he informed me that they have an internal tracking sheet that they use to monitor numbers and project plan for any changes in needs. So
on there, as Parks and Rec is tied to that open space planning, Josh, do you know how much they'll be engaged in that planning, the Parks Department or Parks Commission?
Both proposals included significant sort of community engagement pieces, including consultation with the relevant town departments, primarily Parks and Rec, but as well as, relevant committees. But it didn't quite say, if they would have more voting power or anything, but both proposals included Parks and Rec as key stakeholders.
Okay. Anything else on this topic?
No, I did try to go in and update started 50% progress in strategy, but I used true false, which is totally fine.
Sorry.
Yes, I just want to let you know that I did it in there.
All right, so sorry, you did. I see now.
It's totally fine.
All right, so I'm gonna go back instead of yes, I'll do true. There we go. All right. 1.1.5.
So the, as far as the cleanup is concerned on the river, it's, the big gorilla in the room is the Superfund assignment by the EPA, and that's a big plus. But it's started. I wouldn't call it close to 50%. It won't be for 10 years. But the more I looked at it, I realized that continued efforts to clean up the deposit is somewhat vague. It doesn't say what you're cleaning up, and the PCBs have been there for a long time, and they're buried in the sediment, and so that's something that the Neponset Watershed's been working on for a long time, and the Conservation Commission seems to be behind, supporting the efforts there. But there is also just the general cleanup of the deposit, whether it's right along the banks or actually in the river. And so it just so happens the Neponset Watershed is having a cleanup on this Saturday for a number of locations in Milton down through Quincy. And this is sort of a maintenance item. It's not. This isn't a once and done. We typically do one in the spring and in the fall, and it is coordinated. There are several times we need to get permission from the Conservation Commission to do some things, but I wouldn't say that that's the Conservation Commission is necessarily a partner on it. That's just a regulating agency, and the Neponset Watershed is really the one that does it. And we have done some with neighborhood groups. The Pine Tree Neighborhood Association, Pine Tree Brook Neighborhood Association is one in particular that we've done a lot of work with, and they hold their own cleanups that we support. And getting the DPW, the Milton DPW in to pick up the debris, etc. But the PCBs, it's going to be a long time before we're 50% on that. So,
All right, thanks, Tabor. How about the next one? 1.1.6.
so this is it is interesting that this is slightly different than the first one at the top of the page, but it really it's so similar that some of the answers for me was what we've already done above. And now we did a lot of work at the lower mills when we were doing the rezoning and working on the Milton Landing and getting funding for dredging and et cetera. And that's moving along. But it's not there yet. I would say once the contract for dredging is out, then we could probably call it 50%, but I don't know. And I don't have an update on that.
Okay.
Tabor, I have a quick update on dredging. Sorry, I can't raise my hand because I'm the host, so I apologize to butt in. Ty and Bond, the engineering firm that is set to do the dredging, will be giving an update on their progress and their plan at tomorrow morning's Select Board Milton Landing Committee. So if you were interested,
that's timely.
that's 8:30 tomorrow morning for the landing committee.
Great, thanks, Josh.
All right.
Roxanne, 1.1.7.
I spoke to DPW director. They have nothing to do with exotic invasive plant species. That's not under their domain. That's really Concom. Haven't heard of anything. It's just, sometimes they might make it with conditions, maybe when they approve a project, maybe. The only thing DPW, I guess they have someone that can spray for poison ivy. That's what I heard. But that's about it. So it's really more into conservation. And I have no other update than that.
Tabor, you have your hand up on that?
So the Conservation Commission does have, I've forgotten her name, but one of the members has been given the task of pushing for invasive removal, and that I just know through my experience with the Pine Tree Brook Neighborhood Association cleanup, they went down and did an awful lot of invasive cleanup, and the DPW job was just to pick up the material that was left over after that, but they weren't, Roxanne, you're right, they weren't really involved. But the Concom was leading that, taking advantage of somebody else doing the cleanup. So maybe they should be linked in there as the partner instead of DPW.
I'm sorry, so who was doing that? I couldn't hear that last part.
A member of the Conservation Commission is in charge of it, and I've forgotten her name.
Okay.
I would probably recognize it, but I just bumped into her while she was doing it, and we were doing a cleanup at the same time.
So should we say,
It seems like the partner ought to be the Concom, not the DPW.
Right.
yeah, so I don't want to change the actual plan reference, but we can put it in our notes. Does that make sense, what I just typed in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can say, do we think it started then? It's here as a false.
Sounds like it.
Sounds like it started, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to. All right, the next one. Elaine.
Yeah.
Can you
So,
see that?
it's very small for me. That's why I had to open it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
Next
okay.
time I'll try and be on my desktop.
It's all good. Yeah, so the Shade Tree Advisory Committee purchased trees to plant by the DPW, and they did the 360 tree initiative, which has been completed. So they planted all of the 360 shade trees. And then tree protection was added to zoning.
So you have this as true, 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 all the way across, the first one.
Wow.
That's good.
It only
Okay.
took 9.5 years.
Anybody have any questions on that? All right, then we'll move to the next one. Roxanne?
So the town planner said that there really aren't too many brownfield sites in town. He'd like to have some kind of a book or something, you know, to keep track of them. There aren't that many, but there is one particularly on Truman Parkway that's owned by a private developer. That hasn't, it's actually up for sale, but there are a lot of complications with it because of where it sits and getting access to that property.
Yeah, I think that one site is probably why this is here even.
Mhm.
Right. And many years ago, they had talked about developing that. I remember going to some of those initial meetings on that. It's on Truman Parkway. And I remember
They got a
that
permit for 90 units, I think.
they can't get access because of the tracks.
Right, but
Yeah.
the town gave them permission to do it, but the MBTA wouldn't, so,
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, there's zoning in place to allow their brownfield zoning.
right.
And I don't think that zoning applies elsewhere because I think you're right. I don't know that it's been identified to be applicable elsewhere. All right, well, I think the idea was that we don't have that many underutilized parcels in town. You know, some communities have many, but that's one, if you're trying to get some housing or other things, that's been targeted. Okay, so we'll move on to, yeah, in terms of, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the false. Yeah, I think mean, I suppose what we could say is it's true that there was zoning put in place.
Mhm.
So it allows it, but that's about as much as we could say, right?
Right.
Okay, Elaine?
Yeah, so for this one, I connected with Steve O'Donnell, the chair of the Milton Historic Commission, and they are frequently charged with demolition applications. Their goal is obviously to prevent loss of the character of the town, which he also said, you know, some of these older carriage houses could be opportunity for future ADU or whatever, if that ever comes. But you know, their goal is to you know, not lose these historic properties, but that's really kind of all that he had outside of having an idea, you know, to have an affirmative action bylaw that would require maintenance on historic properties, both residential and commercial. So I just had this one as started.
Okay,
A brief hand raise, apologies to continue.
Please go ahead.
The chair of the planning board, a few sessions ago, asked the planning department to review the sort of feasibility of a minimum maintenance bylaw that would sort of do that affirmative requirement. And I believe we presented to the planning board, but it may have been cut due to length of the meeting. We spoke with inspectional services, and at present, inspectional services wouldn't have the manpower, people power, rather, to effectively enforce a minimum maintenance bylaw, but it's certainly been investigated and continues to be, at least on the staff side.
That's helpful. Can include that. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And Elaine. Looks like we're sticking with you, Elaine. Oops, sorry. How did I do that now?
It's just referencing what we had already covered, because it's the same thing, but for
All right, I'm sorry, what number was it? I'm trying to find it. Is it 1 point?
1.2.1 and 1.2.2.
Right, here we go, right? Here's where we were. All right. Same thing, right, in the comment. Okay, so now, geez, sorry, guys. So the, on this one, it's really design guidelines that can do this. Zoning can't really do it. It's recommended to have a design review board, which that has not been taken up yet by planning board or others. But I would say that because the guidelines for Milton Village are scheduled to be adopted next or in 2 weeks, I believe, and design guidelines for East Milton Square are part of the RFP, that I would say that we are making progress on this. So I'm going to make this a true. And I think because those two districts are pretty important in terms of this goal, that we might be able to say we get to 50% once we get those other design guidelines done. Any questions? All right, then we will move to 1.2.4 and Roxanne.
Sure. So I talked with Sue Galvin, the town clerk, today. She said that each department has their own documents. They store them in the basement of town hall. And she loves the idea for a future project of helping out with this. In the past, she's gotten some prices from places that know, you know, what you really need to store and what you don't. I think some departments, she said, are scanning certain documents in, but even if you scan certain things in, there are certain documents you have to keep. So the scanning is just not going to cut it for everything, because you need sometimes these backup documents. So unfortunately, that's how each department is doing it. They're storing them in the basement of town hall, and there's no money really to do anything in terms of better system for that. But she'd love it.
I wonder if there's not grant money for it.
I don't know. But she thinks it's a great idea. It's just, they don't have the money to do it.
So isn't there a safe at town hall that certain documents, historic documents are kept in? Like a fireproof safe,
I thought so.
walk-in one?
There are multiple vaults on either side of the building. One that's located in the accounting department and one in engineering. And there may be mirror ones on the lower floor. But those aren't necessarily holding like fire specific things, and are mostly used for additional storage, regardless of the sort of sensitivity of those documents.
I don't know what archival documents are being referenced here without going back and looking more detail, but I know, like, for example, the building department in Boston, certain historical documents are kept at the Boston Public Library. So I wonder if there's any relationship that could be formed with the library, the Milton Library, and archival documents. Seems like they're the type of facility that would be better suited for storing sensitive material.
I would think so. Definitely.
The
a great
library
idea.
currently supports much of the historical commission's documentation, and much of that is relevant to town historical documents. These are typically the sort of documents kept for sort of the state requirements on retention.
Yeah, I think this is probably referring to things that are of historic relevance more than, and building documents can become that if we're historic buildings, you know, like finding original drawings for a historic property. All right, well, I'm not sure what the follow-up is on this. If the clerk would love to see it, I don't know if she would like to pursue a grant or pursue funding. I wonder if that could come through the CPA monies for on the historical side. It'd be something to ask the committee. Maybe.
What about the new fire station? There's
I
the
think
second
that's-
floor of that fire station. There's no money to finish it or renovate it, but I'm thinking if you've got a lot of square footage up there, maybe there's money to do it. And then it would be done to historical document preservation standards with the right HVAC and humidity control and
Mhm.
whatever else.
Good ideas. Maybe we should ask the new TA just came in, so maybe when he gets a little more acclimated, that might be an idea.
Mhm.
Be great to see what's being stored down there and what would need to be
Mhm.
shifted elsewhere, and then look at, like, you know, access, because
Right.
you know, there could be sensitivity to who has access of it, and that might impact where you'd want it to go.
True. Okay,
So maybe some further outreach, Roxanne, and you can update us down the road.
sure.
Okay, great, thanks. Next, 1.3.1 is also you, Roxanne, restoring Milton's boulevards.
Right, so I know that there was I think Elaine had mentioned about the trees and so forth. So the Shade Tree Advisory Committee with the 90,000. When I spoke to Chase Berkeley from DPW, he said that most of it's spent, but there is still some there for some final trees. The process is that the Shade Tree Advisory Committee recommended locations in town for these trees. Also, people can ask to have a tree. There's a form that they fill out and they request a tree. But I understand that they still have some money in that line that they can do some trees from when I spoke to them a couple of weeks ago, but maybe that's changed since then.
Okay. I would think that one of the streets, there's also DCR or a state roadways, right? Like the Blue Hills Parkway. That it's in Milton, but we don't have control over the planting trees, right?
Right.
They seem to keep up with planting trees there.
Yes.
All right, just keep going with you, Roxanne.
Sure. Oh, all right, moving right along. So.
I'm sorry, Roxanne, back here
Yeah,
on these, on this one, would you say on the boulevard that that's begun?
I would say that that's pretty well done. It's
Okay,
more than
so-
50%, it's almost met. So if you want to put even met, I however you want to put it at the end, because they're spending the rest of that money,
Okay,
I
all
would
right,
say.
so I'm sorry,
Okay, so that's one more.
Right.
So the ongoing work with the traffic commission, the bike master plan is nearly complete. Nothing really changed on this item
okay.
from
So I
last
would say
time,
here,
right? And you could
I'm
put true for the next, because it's really 50% met, wouldn't you say? Although we don't have, a lot with the cut through traffic, so maybe not.
yeah, I would say let's leave it at begun, right?
Yeah,
There
I
could
think
be
that's
some further
fine.
work there. Okay,
Sure.
sorry, this is supposed to be.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, Elaine, back to you on the playgrounds.
Yeah, so this one was considered complete before I joined this committee, so we can kind of move past this one, just, the playground planners.
They took the ball and
Yeah, right.
rolled with it.
Right.
All right, then we'll keep going. Back to Roxanne on the
Not
dressing.
much to add on that one. I mean, except for they have well, he just left. They had somebody in the building department that used to go out and respond to some of these situations where people had, lots of extra cars in the yard, or, lots of things that shouldn't be in the yard and so forth, any kind of complaints from the building department had somebody that was just left their department right now and addressed a lot of that. So I'm not quite sure going forward.
One thing I'm thinking is that the decrepit building by the Milton Food Mart, and that's a zoning challenge, because zoning was done there assuming that you could combine parcels. One of the parcels sold, it's not going to get combined. And so it's kind of like, we do have some situations with non-conforming uses that you don't have a viable way to make the property something usable unless you go for variances or things. So maybe one of the things we could look at here is to see whether zoning could help this, at least in that particular corner.
Right. I mean, the other thing I will say is the Board of Health gets a lot of complaints too. So sometimes we've had things where people are working on homes and there are some issues that we have to go out and address. It can be anything from people, too many leaves in the yard and they're blowing into the neighbors. It could be smoke from, one yard into another. So, and a lot of, things blowing into another yard. So we get all sorts of complaints there too. So I would say the Board of Health addresses some of this too.
Okay.
Complaints, housing complaints, in terms of blight. And also, we've had a bunch of hoarding cases in town that have come before the Board of Health. I don't know if you knew that as well.
No.
Yeah, we've had a couple. So between the outdoor yard areas and indoor, but so Board of Health also works on that a little bit.
Okay.
All right, is that me again?
It is. Here we go.
That's completed. That should actually be completed. All the Purple Heart signage is at all of the entrances. DPW director confirmed that with me.
How about we give it a 50%? Because I think this also addressed kind of gateway signage, which maybe that might be a little bit more than that. I don't. Do you
He
think?
seemed to think that we're all there. So
Okay.
I mean, but I can certainly go back to him on that about the gateway entrances and ask him if there's anything else he wants that is not.
Okay. Yeah. All right. If you don't mind double checking that.
Sure.
And then on the blight, would you say that this is all false? I forgot to ask you about that.
No, I would say it started because it's sort of ongoing, I would say.
Yeah,
Right?
okay.
It's not, a cut and dry thing. It's an ongoing thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, back to Elaine.
So Park and Rec uses existing resources as well as outsources when needed. So some examples that they provided were Houghton's Pond and Milton Academy. They're used for spring and fall sessions. They also created a Facebook page in 2016 and they do a great job. I think I went on and took a look at what they've been doing in there, and they promote and fill programs through that page. And they launched a new registration platform to improve ease of use, and they did that this year. So I gave true across the board unless anyone disagrees with that.
No, you don't have any? Okay, thank you. Dick,
Hey, Cheryl.
we've got this one here.
I think we're pretty much along with that, aren't we? With the bicycle master plan is pretty much wrapping up. And I think with some of the improvements hopefully done in Milton, not Milton Village, East Milton, in terms of allowing pedestrian and bicycle traffic to access the square. I think
What do you
the
think
plan-
about keeping it at 50%? Because the bike master plan has suggestions for making more improvements.
50% is probably where it should be, in as much as that it's, the plan will be done,
Right.
it'll be vetted, and now it has to be implemented.
Okay.
And that is always the fun part.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, we're back to Roxanne on airplane noise.
So pretty much the first part's the same. Second part, I just noticed I missed an I in decision at the last word. But the select board voted to appeal the 4L runway decision. And that's where we're at this point. So on that last word decision, I should have an I in there.
I'm sorry, my laptop is not making it easy to do that. Well, can we just catch that later? Can you make a note?
Okay.
Sorry, it's just bumped me down there. All right. Elaine. 2.1.2.
Yep.
Recreational.
Yeah, so developing additional recreational fields is just challenging due to the location scarcity. There is a need for additional fields and update to existing fields. For example, the field at Lower Guile, they said that they last about 2 months before it's out of commission. I actually would put this as started, if you don't mind, because they have added some multi-use courts as well as street hockey. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I keep doing this to you, Roxanne, but on the airplane noise, would you put it at started or something more than that?
Depends what you're using as your metric.
There's still planes up there.
I mean, there's still planes, and so I don't know that we're 50%.
Okay, I would keep it at just on the started then. Okay, sounds good.
And I'd say ongoing.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to be ongoing
Yeah.
right here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is interesting as planning department, but it seems like it should be a Parks and Rec lead.
I think we skipped one. We skipped one.
Sorry, I keep doing that too.
No
Sorry.
worries.
Go ahead, Elaine.
Yeah, so restore, repair, and maintain existing recreational facilities. So it's an ongoing process, particularly in the springtime. The current priority areas would include Flatley Field, a plan to redo Andrews Park basketball courts, which should happen this fall, and the grass lacrosse also at Andrews Park. Additionally, there's improvements that were made to Guile baseball, softball fields this year, multi-use tennis pickleball courts, which I mentioned both in 2021 and 22, and 2.4 million in funding was approved by town meeting this year for the Lower Guile field. So that would be turf installation, seating for 500 plus spectators, press box, and lighting and sound improvements.
So do you think it's truly at 50%? Sounds like they're making a lot of progress.
They're making a lot of progress. I mean, I think this is one of those things that's like always ongoing. So, but I mean,
Yeah, we can keep it there. We can keep it there, keep tracking it.
Yeah.
All right. Now, access to recreation, all neighborhoods. This is something I mentioned earlier. We're talking about candidates. Not all neighborhoods have equal access to playgrounds and open space. And so I think that is something that the open space master plan is going to be taking a look at. And that's just getting started. So I think we could say it started, but no more than that. Dick?
The Milton Landing Committee has been meeting for, seems like a long time. I'm gonna guess maybe for 2 years, and we're getting close to issuing an RFP for 25 Wharf Street, which is the commonly called the Milton Yacht Club piece of property, as well as a newly obtained piece of property from the town from 88 Wharf, which is 41 Wharf Street. The RFPs will be going out, I'm guessing, Josh, maybe the end of this month. And we'll have a better sense of who the lessees are and what is going to be allowed on that piece of property. Currently, as you probably know, if you've been down there, the yacht club had been using a piece of property that had been loaned to them, for lack of a better term, from 88 Wharf, for boat storage and boat maintenance. They term it a working yacht club, boat yacht. There are some people that aren't quite as enthusiastic about that usage, and part of the taking the lead from the master plan, they want to open it up to more friendly user use going forward. So we'll know a lot more. This is pretty much moving along. This is also ties into the dredging, the potential dredging of the Neponset River at Milton Landing. And so it should be, for the small piece of property we have that has water access, I think that we'll see some positive changes in the near future.
So Dick, do you think it's best to keep this at started or give it more than that? Give it a 50?
Oh, I think it would give it 50, Cheryl, because
Yeah,
in essence,
I agree.
This RFP is going out. The town will decide who the lessees are and the terms and conditions of that lease. And once that happens, the rest of it is just, lining up the blocks and putting them in place. I think we're pretty far along, I think, on this, unless there's something comes up. For example, in tomorrow's meeting that we hear that, they can't dredge it, or the cost is so exorbitant. It's something that the town doesn't want to take on.
Well, I will say that this is the first thing we tackled.
Yeah.
So 6 years in the making, right? At least.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you on the 50%. Tabor, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think, but as Dick says, it really depends on the last piece of information, which is the dredging. Because the yacht club has had a lease and has been paying for a portion of the property. But he's right, the other portion was really a loan, which just about doubles the size of the property down there that they've been using. And it's now that it's owned and controlled by the town, it's really up to us to figure out whether or not it's fair.
So question, Dick, here it says lead parties Neponset River Watershed Association. Tabor, Dick, has that happened between the select board and the Neponset River Watershed?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think Richard Wells, who's the chair of the committee, has had some one-off conversations with
Ian?
friends or acquaintances with the watershed, but nothing formal. To my knowledge,
I'm not aware of any formal.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe Dick, you can bring up that.
I can bring that up tomorrow morning.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, Tabor.
So this is really all about the Board of Health doing the community assessment this year, and I apologize, this is a little old. This is as of the end of July. And I don't know, Roxanne, are you aware of any completion date on that? It was supposed to be done in the fall, but I don't know whether, I honestly have not checked in the last 30 days whether or not it's been done.
I believe they're still working on that, but the other thing is they just got a grant with a bunch of towns like Weymouth and Randolph, Quincy and Milton. I think Weymouth had the grant, and it's looking at food insecurities. So that's a new grant that they just got.
So that goes down to the
I
next
can go right
one.
here.
Yeah, and that was one that she said they were applying for, but you're saying they got it?
They got it, yes, because
Oh,
we
okay.
just had somebody that's gonna sort of for 10 hours a week is gonna be working on that for the town of Milton under the grant. And it's related to food insecurity.
So then
That was the
that can be
focus of this.
relabeled as started, okay.
Yeah, that's
Because
just,
she said they'd applied for it, but hadn't been granted yet.
yeah, they just
Last I
received.
spoke to them.
Yeah, I believe Weymouth might have been the one that had the grant that brought them in, but I believe it's Randolph, Quincy, Weymouth and Milton, I believe. And there's a whole booklet. Caroline showed me the other day. It's a whole booklet on it, but the focus for this part of the grant is looking at food insecurity. So they're gonna look at in with all ages. So in the school age population as well as elderly in town.
Do you know what the timeline for that is?
The grant is, I believe, for a year,
It's a one-year grant.
maybe with renewable, depending on funding.
That's just begun.
They just hired somebody to work for the 10 hours. So yeah, starting now.
Okay.
We did skip over one above.
Yeah, because we jumped to hearing about that grant. So
Sorry.
Elaine, go ahead. Thanks, Tabor.
Which one are we on? Oh,
Sorry, right here.
yep. Okay. Yeah, so the health department does quarterly inspections of the school, food handling procedures, and they attend one time per month Milton Public School health and wellness meetings to support as determined. And they do flu clinics yearly. So I would say it seems like there's a really good partnership with the health department and the schools. But so I had two across the board.
Okay. Roxanne, since you're on the Board of Health, do you have anything to add to what Elaine put here?
No, I think she summed it up pretty well.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Tabor?
So we just did that one.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Elaine, back to you.
So this was another one that had completion before I joined the committee, and it was that consolidated facilities confirm that all buildings are up to code. I know that that's something that consistently changes, but so I did add a little bit more that consolidated facilities did work closely with Milton Public Schools to address and improve air ventilation during the pandemic for every classroom, as well as for our buildings, our public buildings. So,
so Elaine, did you say you spoke to consolidated facilities?
I spoke to
Oh,
Caroline.
sorry.
Yeah.
Liz did, right? Because I'm surprised we got this all across the board, because I understand the DPW report from like, I don't know, 6 years ago or something, that the DPW facilities had some problems. And then I happen to know that the town hall is not handicapped accessible fully. And so I would say that it's not completely compliant, but
Yeah. Well, we should.
So how about we not put it on, it's met fully, we keep it at the 50%, and then maybe we can check in on that.
Yeah,
I know that's before you, so I'm gonna change this.
It was, but I'm happy to follow up and look into the handicap accessibility and anything else.
And DPW, I would say.
DPW, yeah. Okay, no problem.
Okay. I think the next one is a topic for that we've been working on, so I don't know that we need to talk about that much further, except that we've started it. It's not false that we haven't started it. And we're going to continue to work on it. Right? Anybody have any comments on that? Ongoing effort by our committee and DPW and planning department, really. Yeah, DPW planning. Okay, so then back to you, Elaine, and we're almost done for tonight.
Sure. So Park and Rec maximizes the field use by scheduling, according to them, as many sports teams as they can per field and making changes to encourage that they're used by all ages. So pickleball seems to be the recent trend. A new street hockey rink. There's an adult golf clinic. There's the Wildcat Den that is reopening this year. They host concerts at the Council of Aging and the Town Hall gazebo. So those are just a few examples of how they do that.
Okay, great. Everybody agree that that's goal's been met, strategy's been met, I think so. Elaine, we're finishing out with you. 2 more in your plate here.
Okay. So additional facilities, we have, as I mentioned a couple times, the new street hockey rink at Kelly Field, the 5 multi-use pickleball tennis courts at Kelly Field as well, 2 in 2021 and 3 in 2022. And then the next one, providing more wholesome activities for teens and preteens. Also previously mentioned, we have the Wildcat Den. There's a ski program at Blue Hills, sports clinics, expansion to the lineup in the summer of this year included track and field. There was also for Park and Rec summer program, they expanded it to have a younger age group, and then the street hockey rinks. So definitely,
You would definitely put this as started, right?
Yeah, I would put it as started and scrap that with the younger program because we're talking about teens and preteens. But they're definitely expanding their use and providing wholesome activities or trying to provide wholesome activities. So I would put it, I would definitely put it as started, if not 50% progress met.
I hadn't scrolled down far enough. We're not quite at the end yet. So we don't have a person signed to this. That I don't remember why, but
I went in and put some notes. I noticed that.
Okay, so do you want me to put you here then, Elaine?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
So there's a community health social worker to begin in September, actually on Monday, and they're going to work closely with the Council on Aging outreach worker to support the senior population. And the Council on Aging plans many activities and trips for seniors. So I put in a couple of examples. They do a Woo Socks trip, yoga, luncheons, live music, and all sorts of different things, both on site and off site.
Okay.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the social worker that was hired through the Board of Health for a grant, they're here for the year. And I know that the police department is actually hiring somebody as well. I think a social worker as well. They had somebody part-time, I think they shared with another community, maybe Braintree or something, who left. And I don't know that that necessarily fits in to this specifically, but it may. That will help with all ages as well. So we'll have two people, which is great.
Agreed.
All right. So can one of you update, if this is the right spot, update that to
Sure.
add? Okay.
Dog park, that's the next one. So the feedback I got on that one, that it's challenging to find adequate space. They don't want to put one next to, or Park and Rec does not want to put one next to a playground. Of course, we've got Cunningham Park, but that's privately owned. So there's really no movement on this one that I know of.
Okay. Tabor?
So one of the questions as the lead party on this, it seems like I'd assumed it was Parks and Rec, but we for all ages and include all residents, the Council on Aging does do, as Elaine noted above, their bus trips and other activities But the Park and Rec, you know, their point was their one item that they do for all ages, for everybody, is they do the Turner's Pond fishing derby, anglers education, and that is a program that they monitor, but they don't actually run it. It's run by Mass Fisheries. But the school department and church groups, I don't have any information on, community events for all residents from them. I mean, other than townwide, Milton, celebrate Milton Day, that kind of thing. But that's what the Park and Rec, it seems like they ought to be the lead party, and that's what they came up with for their contribution, is something that's suitable for all ages.
So did the plan not have a lead party identified? Do you remember? We can look at that.
I don't believe it does.
Yeah, we have to look at this one and this one, see if it didn't have one. Okay.
But it's, I mean, I would say it should be true all the way across, because, that has been addressed, but.
Just gonna make a suggestion to maybe add the concerts, the gazebo concerts, because I think it appeals to all ages.
That's true, yeah.
Roxanne?
Let's see. So there's the Equity and Justice Committee, and KL Scott just came in. They completed a survey for the town, on the town side, and the departments, and they reported their findings just at our last select board meeting, and they'll continue with their next steps. So they just did a preliminary presentation.
Okay, great. Now I think we are at the last one. If I've got this right, Roxanne.
Nothing really to add there. I mean, there's the broadband initiative. I don't really have anything else to add on that.
But up here, we would say back.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would say that's
Yeah.
true.
This is true.
It's true.
You think true here?
Well, I mean, we're in the,
Yeah.
they're
No, I think-
presented some of their findings, and they're gonna
Yeah.
get a plan
Good there.
together.
All right, folks, we've done it. Goals 1 and 2. Congrats. That's great. I think these two are pretty big topics too. 3 and 4. I know we have 7, so we have to divide it. I'd say we do 3 and 4 and possibly 5. Let's see. No, I think 3 and 4 are big. We'll do 5, 6, and 7 in November. We have town meeting in December. So unless we want to squeeze another meeting in. But otherwise, what I've done for other presentations or reports at town meeting is a verbal presentation with a, over a couple of slides that are pretty quick synopsis. It wouldn't be anything like this for town meeting. But so does it make sense that we do goals 3 and 4 in our next meeting? And then the November meeting, 5, 6, and 7?
What else do we have on the agendas?
I don't have other items at the moment. It's not to say that we're not going to probably want to continue to track the town center parking utilization. Are there other things that people would like to see on the agenda? If there are, you can let me know.
I'm just thinking we spent a lot of time on the applications, and if we hadn't spent that much time on the applications, we probably would have been able to get through 3 here too. So if we really went at it, it depends on how far we get.
All right, so why don't we try for 5 next time as well? And then that could leave 6 and 7 and something else on the agenda after that.
Or we bump it if we have to.
Yeah.
I don't
like-
have as many on those, so if anyone needs any support or help with theirs, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to help.
Great, thank you.
Nice.
All right, I'm gonna stop screen share. By the way, thanks for the reformatting here, Elaine. I think it's easier, this is much easier to work with now. I think we want to talk about the top 20 recommendations at one of the meetings too. So maybe that's if we do 3, 4, and 5 at our next meeting, 6 and 7 at the November meeting, we could do the top 20 at that November meeting as well. And then depending upon the, how quickly people get sworn in, I think we would have our new members for the October meeting. So what we might want to do actually, Tabor, is what I did earlier this year when we had new members, which is just to kind of give an overview, kind of get the new members a little bit up to speed. So we'll definitely need to do that. Okay. Anybody have anything else that they'd like to see on the agenda? October, November, December? All right, then with that, not too much past 9, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor by roll call, Roxanne,
Yes.
Elaine,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Tabor,
yes.
and the chair, yes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Night.